Hey everyone, this is Jungkook. Before we start, I want to know where you're listening from. Drop your country in the comments below. I've been carrying something heavy for a while, and I promised myself I would say it out loud when I was brave enough to tell it without hiding behind pretty phrases or careful timing. I almost married someone I didn't love. I don't say that to be dramatic. I say it because I want you to understand how easy it is, even for someone who sings about feeling alive, to drift into a life that looks perfect and feels empty. I'm not here to blame anyone. Not her, not my family, not the industry, not even the part of me that wanted to feel safe more than it wanted to feel honest. I'm here because somewhere between airplanes and encores, photo shoots and polite smiles, I confused momentum for meaning, and it took everything in me to pull the brake before the train went somewhere I couldn't live. There's this strange rhythm you learn when you grow up under bright lights. The calendar becomes your compass. The noise of approval becomes your weather. People tell you you're ready for things before you're ready to feel them. In a hotel room that looks like every other hotel room, someone says, "You're at that age." And it lands like a fact. Somewhere else, a brand meeting turns into a conversation about the image of stability and how love stories tame headlines. Someone who doesn't know your laugh suggests that your future should be defined by a date. You nod because nodding is smooth, because nodding is efficient, because nodding keeps the machine oiled. You tell yourself you'll check in with your heart later, the way you promise to stretch after a workout and then never do. The person I almost married is a good person. Kind, accomplished, steady, the kind of person who makes sense on paper, polite to staff, patient with schedules, good with silence. We shared routines more than we shared secrets. Our messages were warm, never wild. We planned more than we dreamed. When I try to remember the first time I thought, maybe this is love, I find a list instead. Family would approve, team would relax, headlines would calm down. I would finally be the version of myself that looks grown, responsible, ready. A good checklist, a quiet checklist, the type you can finish with disciplined focus and clean handwriting. And that should have been the sign. What stopped me wasn't one big explosion. It was a series of small, stubborn truths that refused to be quiet no matter how many schedules I stacked on top of them. It was the way my chest stayed flat when I saw her name, the way my smile felt borrowed in photos, the way I never wanted to rush to tell her things that made no sense yet. It was noticing I was better at being careful than being close. It was waking up after practice with the body buzzing from sweat and music and realizing that alive and safe are not the same word, and good for me is not the same as good to me. I don't walk through this kind of storm alone. I'm not a solitary person. That's both blessing and challenge because everyone who loves you wants to help you choose. And sometimes that help is a mirror and sometimes it's a push. Namjoon Hyung has this way of asking one question that slices through fog without drawing blood. He didn't ask if I loved her. He asked if I felt more myself when I was with her or less. He said it soft, like he was talking to a scared animal. I sat there with a pen in my hand and realized I'd been circling words like stability, future, timing, and never once wrote joy unless I was talking about the stage. Jin Hyun can make a kitchen feel like a confession booth. He chopped, stirred, laughed, and let silence sit next to me without making it awkward. He has this older brother radar for strain in your smile. He didn't give me advice. He gave me space to fail out loud before I failed in real life. He reminded me that doing the wrong kind thing is still wrong when it steals time from two people who could be brave somewhere else. The way he plated the food, carefully and playfully, made me think about care that isn't performative. I realized I wanted a love that was plated like that, thoughtful, a little silly, completely present. Yoongi Hyung has a studio that smells like patience. He hears rhythm in breath. He hears truth in the words you avoid. He told me stories about decisions that looked impressive and felt like cages, about songs that became honest only after he threw away the careful version. He didn't romanticize pain. He respected it. He said something like, When a choice makes you smaller every month, it's not a choice. It's a slow goodbye to yourself. I went home and stared at a contract that wasn't a contract and understood. Hobi Hyung brings sunlight even when the curtains are closed. He reminds you that joy isn't naive, it's skilled. It's trained, it's chosen. He talked about energy leaks, how you can dance full out and still feel robbed if your heart is working overtime to pretend. He asked about little things. Do you laugh without planning it? Do your shoulders drop when you see her? Do you sing nonsense around her without feeling stupid? I recognize how much of my yes depended on everyone else's relief and how little of it depended on my own breath. Jimin is where I go when I need gentle truth that doesn't clothe itself in philosophy. He understands the difference between a soft place to land and a soft lie to sleep in. He said he'd stand by me either way, but he asked me to promise one thing, that I wouldn't turn someone's life into a project I could complete, just to feel like a man who finishes what he starts. I carried that sentence like a pebble in my shoe. I couldn't forget it, even when the room got loud. It hurt just enough to keep me awake. Taeyoung films people like he's guarding them from forgetting themselves. We were out late after rehearsal, city air a little damp, the neon looking like it had been up too long. He showed me footage he'd taken of me laughing when none of us knew he was recording. I looked different, looser, messy, uncool. My laugh came from the back of my throat, not the front of my face. He paused the frame and said nothing. I saw the boy in me. I keep trying to protect from big decisions by making bigger ones. I thought, if I'm not laughing like that with the person I'm going to promise everything to, then what exactly am I promising to protect? The world around me, all the teams and plans and expectations, they weren't villains. They were doing their jobs, trying to keep chaos from kicking down doors. Families worry, staff deflect, brands prefer predictable, and there's a version of me that prefers that too. The version that loves being on time and hitting notes and making the hard look simple. But the body knows. It keeps score in subtle ways. It fidgets when your spirit is compromised. It gets very quiet when your mouth tries to sound certain. It counts down in a language you can't translate until you respect it enough to stop pretending. I remember the almost moment, I remember the first time I hit a note clean after weeks of missing it. So clear, it was a little cruel. A rehearsal space, a screen lighting up with dates and arrangements and all the logistics that make a promise look like a product. I could see it all laid out. The ceremony tidy and tasteful, the photos glowing, the headlines concerned but eventually approving, the machine purring in relief that the unpredictable boy had become a dependable man. It was soothing like white noise. It was also anesthetizing. I could feel my hands getting colder. I could hear my voice sounding older than my heart. Someone asked me for a confirmation on something small, and I found myself saying, "Give me 5 minutes." I stepped into a hallway that smelled like dust and wires and the leftover air of rooms that everyone uses and no one remembers. I called my mother. We didn't talk about approval. We talked about peace. Sometimes the oldest words are the softest ones. Eat, sleep, don't lie to yourself. My father said very little, the way men who mean it say very little. Their silence sounded like trust. Not trust in my ability to perform a life, but trust in my ability to pause it when I needed to breathe. When I hung up, I looked out a narrow window and I saw nothing that would make a movie scene. No rain against glass, no city skyline preaching destiny. Just a parking lot, a few exhausted birds, a sky that was doing its job without needing applause. I realized love should feel like that sky, huge and present without demanding credit for existing. An older fan once handed me a letter at an event. She shook a little, and I don't think it was because of me. She wrote about marrying for safety and spending years learning to forgive herself for making everyone else comfortable while making herself smaller. She didn't tell me what to do. She just wanted me to know that a quiet mistake can be as loud as a scandal when your soul has to listen to it every day. I folded that letter and put it in a drawer with other keepsakes I pretend I don't reread. The paper has softened at the edges. I thought about her while I stood in that hallway. I thought about the girl I was about to make a promise to, a promise that would steal her chance at being chosen by someone whose heart sprinted to her, not walked politely. There's a different kind of courage that isn't about stages or cameras or high notes. It's the courage to disappoint people for the right reason. To tell a kind person that they deserve crazy devotion, not careful affection. To face a room full of logistics and say the inconvenient sentence that blows through them like wind and leaves everything messy and honest. I said it. No ceremony, no excuses, just the truth. It wasn't a cliff. It was a floor I could finally feel under my feet. After that, the world didn't end. It just got louder and then quieter. There were conversations that were equal parts relief and sadness. There were looks that said, "Thank you for not dragging this into a place it didn't belong." There were also looks that said, "You complicated things." And I can't argue with that. Truth complicates things before it cleans them. Schedules shifted. Some people frowned. Some people hugged me like I had come back from somewhere far. I went to the practice room and danced until my lungs negotiated a truce with my thought. I sang until my voice stopped sounding like a press statement and started sounding like a person again. I'm not promising that I'll recognize love the second it walks in. I'm not pretending I have a perfect definition of it now. I just know I won't confuse silence with peace anymore. I won't mistake a completed checklist for a living heart. I won't call stability love when what I mean is safety. I want the kind that makes me more myself, the kind that makes me text nonsense in the middle of the day, the kind that makes ramen taste like a ceremony, the kind that lets the boy who laughs with his whole face grow into a man who loves with his whole spine. I want a life where the members can look at me and see the same kid they protected, only steadier, not smaller. If you were expecting a grand theory or a speech about culture, I only have something smaller and harder to practice. Be honest before you're impressive. That's what this is. I almost married someone I didn't love because I'm good at finishing things. I start because I'm good at giving people what they need. Because sometimes I am better at performing bravery than living it. But I stopped, not because I'm a hero, but because I finally respected the quiet truth more than I feared the loud consequences. I'm still learning. I'll keep singing about it because that's how I carry things without breaking them. And when the right love comes, I want it to recognize me, not the version of me that's convenient. I want it to find me mid-laugh on Taehyung's camera, mid-advice in Namjoon's kitchen, mid-silence with Yoongi, mid-dance with Hobie, mid-tears with Jimin who refuses to let me lie to myself, mid-bite of something Jin plated like a joke and a blessing. I want it to find me in motion, not in disguise. If you're listening from far away, from a country I may never see with my own eyes, just know this. I didn't choose the easy story. I chose the one my chest could breathe in. And that's how I know I can keep walking toward a future that doesn't need explaining. The morning after the decision, I woke up before my alarm and just lay there listening to the apartment breathe. The air had that quiet weight it gets after rain, like the city was still under a blanket. For a second, I wondered if I had imagined everything, if the calls, the meetings, the faces going still, when I said the inconvenient sentence were all part of that weird dream zone between midnight and sleep. But my body remembered, there's a way your chest sits when you've told the truth. It's not light exactly, but it's honest. I made tea, I didn't finish, scrolled without reading, and finally put my phone face down because the screen kept trying to be the boss of my mood. I didn't want headlines or advice. I wanted something basic to hold on to. Breath works. Floor works. Music always works. I went to the practice room before anyone else. The building was different at that hour. Hallway lights a little too bright. The vending machine humming like it was guarding secrets. The floor still cool from the night. I stretched in the way my old teacher taught me. Slow, patient, listening to the stubborn spots instead of trying to bully them open. The mirror held me without judgment. I put on a beat, then another, then nothing at all, and let my feet find shapes that didn't try to impress anyone. Somewhere between a stumble and a clean turn, I felt a crack open inside me, not a break, more like a window. Wind came in, the kind that smells like concrete and leaves, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. By the time Hobie Hyung came in, I had sweat pooling in the collar of my shirt and a grin that wasn't trained. He didn't ask questions. He just mirrored me for 8 counts, then cut the music and looked me straight in the eyes. No pity, no pep talk. Just that hard, soft focus he has when he's checking if you're actually here. I nodded. He nodded back like we'd signed some invisible document. Good, he said, voice quiet. Keep this. He tossed me a towel and turned the music back on, but a different track, something messy, something that didn't beg for symmetry. We danced until silence felt like a drink of water. After, I slipped into Yoongi Young's studio because it always feels like the inside of a deep breath. He was at the desk with the lights low, a single lamp turning his notebook pages into small islands of gold. He didn't look up, just asked, "You hungry?" I said yes, even though I wasn't sure. He pushed over a container someone had left and didn't ask what happened, which was the same thing as asking me to talk only if my words were ready. I told him I didn't have a speech. I just had a feeling, the feeling that I had walked back from the cliff. I didn't realize I was on because the view had been distracting. He said, "Good. Now right before the world tries to rewrite it for you." I started with nonsense lines, the kind of words that arrive before meaning does. Asphalt, rain, quiet kitchen, safe lies, soft alarms. I recorded a scratch melody that wasn't pretty and didn't need to be. Yoongi nodded along without moving his head much, like he was nodding at the part of me that was finally insisting on being in the room. He added a drum that felt like someone knocking on a door you used to be afraid to open. We stacked ideas without judging them. I kept circling back to a single phrase. Don't confuse calm with peace. The difference felt like the difference between a sleeping arm and a resting body. One is numb, the other is alive. When I left the studio, the day had gotten loud again. My phone had grown new branches. Messages from team, family, people who cared, people who were curious, people who were both. I answered the ones that needed care first. I told her I was sorry in a way that didn't beg for a reply. I didn't send paragraphs pretending to be clarity. I sent the truth and left space around it. She deserved that much. I think about her more kindly now than I did when I was busy trying to make us make sense. Sometimes respect only shows up after you stop forcing comfort into places it doesn't belong. Nam Jun-hyun called while he was walking somewhere. I could hear traffic doing that morning argument with itself. He asked me what I felt in my body when I said the sentence. I told him it felt like my ribs finally stopped pretending to be a cage and started acting like a frame, something that holds you without locking you in. He laughed once under his breath the way he does when his heart is relieved. "Then write that down," he said. "Write exactly that line before you forget it." He knows I can forget the most important things if I don't give them a melody to live in. Later, Jin-hyun kidnapped me for groceries. He said he needed help, but I think he was just making sure I didn't sit alone and negotiate with my second thoughts until they tricked me into apologizing to the wrong person, my old habit. He threw vegetables into the cart, like he was dealing cards at a noisy party. He told me absolutely ridiculous stories that had nothing to do with anything until I laughed too loud in the aisle and someone recognized me, and we had to do that polite shuffle. Back in the kitchen, he taught me a new way to chop something that looked fancy and turned simple. "You can make anything gentle if you watch where your hands are," he said. And he wasn't just talking about food. The soup tasted like patience. Taehyung dragged me out that night to stare at lights like we were kids who hadn't learned how to pretend we weren't impressed. He filmed a little without warning. I've stopped asking him to warn me because the best moments arrive hatless. We sat on a curb and didn't solve anything. He played a half-finished jazz track on his phone and hummed around it like a cat circling a spot of sunlight. "You know," he said after a long time, "the camera forgives you faster than you forgive yourself." I didn't understand until I looked at the footage later and saw a face I recognized from years ago, a face that didn't need permission to look happy. I saved the clip and hid it in a folder called Reasons. Jimin came over late like he always does, with that careful knock that says he'll leave if you're not up for it and will stay all night if you are. We didn't talk at first, we just Saturday. My living room knows the weight of that silence. It didn't complain. He asked me what promise I was tempted to make to avoid pain. The question sat between us like a glass of water I wasn't sure I deserved. I told him the truth. That I wanted to promise everyone I'd be fine, that she'd be fine, that the team would be fine, that you'd all be fine, that the story would be neat and respectful. He shook his head. Promise yourself you'll let it be messy, he said. Promise you won't rush the part where your heart learns how to speak without a microphone. I felt something unknot under my sternum. We watched some dumb show until we forgot to be heavy. Healing sometimes looks like bad TV and good company. I wrote back to that older fan who'd given me the letter months ago. I told her I had finally understood what she was trying to give me, a map that doesn't look like a map. Just a sentence you can carry in your pocket for when the fog gets cocky. I didn't say what had happened. I just said thank you, and I meant it the way you mean it when a stranger hands you a tissue at the perfect second. I don't know if she'll ever see the message. It felt important to send anyway, like putting a coin on a windowsill for luck, even if you don't believe in luck that day. At night, I tried to list the small things that still made sense, even when the big things didn't. The feel of tape on my fingers from the mic, the way the room shifts when the members walk in and we stop pretending we're not tired. The inside jokes that have mutated so many times, they don't resemble language anymore. The way the stage smells like metal and possibility right before the lights go up. Those are anchoring points. You can tie yourself to them when the current gets greedy. There were messages I didn't answer because they were asking for a version of me I'm not using anymore, the version that smooths pain into brand-friendly paragraphs. I'll answer when I can do it without lying. I'm learning that "I don't know yet" is a complete sentence, and "not now" can be kindness. I'm learning to finish fewer sentences on autopilot. I'm learning not to schedule my feelings into 20-minute blocks between rehearsal and a meeting that wants me to be charming. I'm learning to let the day be a day that doesn't photograph well. If you're looking for a moral, I don't have a neat one. What I have is a room that keeps receiving me even when I arrive with both hands full of noise. What I have is a group chat that won't let me disappear into a performance of, okay, what I have is music that tells the truth even when I'm tempted to decorate it. And what I have is a promise that's finally pointing in the right direction. I promise to keep my heart awake enough to feel the difference between peace and numb, love and safety, growth and shrinking politely. I promise not to turn someone's life into a project so I can feel finished. I wish I could make this easier for everyone involved. I wish growth came with refunds for the time you spent pretending. It doesn't. What it gives you instead is a key you didn't know you needed until your own door stopped recognizing you. I think I found that key this week, not because I'm brave, but because the lock got honest first. And if there's anything I want you to take from all of this, it's that when the lock is honest, try to be too. Even if your hands shake, especially if they shake. Tomorrow, I'll probably overthink again. I'll probably wonder if I could have worded things better, timed things better, saved everyone from the mess. Then I'll go to the practice room and the mirror will do its quiet job and the music will notice me even if I hide. And one of the members will text something stupidly funny and the world will become survivable again. One beat, one breath, one unglamorous, uncaptionable step at a time. The day after, the city moved on like it always does. Cars argued, coffee lines formed, someone laughed too loud in the street and made a stranger smile without knowing why. I walked through it feeling both invisible and too visible, the way you do when your life has shifted by 1 degree and you're the only one who can feel the tilt. My phone buzzed like a stubborn mosquito. PR notes, calendar options, soft landing phrases. I read them the way you read a manual for a machine you're not sure you want to turn on. Everyone meant well. Everyone wanted to help me keep the glass from cracking, But sometimes you have to let a sound be a sound. If you make everything quiet, you start to believe quiet is truth. It isn't. It's just quiet. We had a meeting to align messaging. The conference room looked like every conference room on earth. A table that's too clean, chairs that want you to sit up straight, a screen that makes you feel like you should measure your soul in bullet points. I listened. I took notes. I let the language try me on. Mutual respect, privacy, asking for space, focusing on work. None of it was wrong. It just wasn't me. When it was my turn, I said I didn't want to post a paragraph that sounded like I was trying to make everyone comfortable with something that isn't comfortable. I said I'd rather keep it human and quiet talk when my voice was in a costume. The room didn't push back hard. They've seen me stubborn, but I wasn't being dramatic. I was being simple. Sometimes simple is scarier because you can't hide in it. After the meeting, I walked a long way back to the car just to move my blood. I ducked into a small park where nobody cares who you are because everyone is busy being themselves. A kid was kicking a ball against a fence like it owed him money. A woman in scrubs stared at nothing with the focus of someone who has given too much all day. I sat on a bench and let the noise be church. I thought about the word alignment. It's a good word when you're talking about choreography or harmonies, or the way 5 bodies learn to breathe together so a stadium feels like a single chest. But alignment with your own heart is messy. It's not about straight lines. It's about listening for the note that refuses to tune to anything false. I went home and cleaned my kitchen like I was training for a competition. There's a part of me that thinks scrubbing a counter is the same as solving a problem. Jin Hyung caught me in the act and sent a picture to the group chat with a caption that made me look like an infomercial for a mop brand. He came over with groceries again, because apparently I'm in a season where vegetables are a love language. He told me to set the table, then play whatever song felt like the inside of my head. I put on a track from years ago that never made it out of my phone because it was too honest and not polished enough. He said, "There you are," like I'd walked into the room twice. Nam Jung-hyung stopped by later with a notebook that had already lived 3 lives. He writes like he breathes on purpose. We didn't dissect my choice. We built a fence around it so it had time to take root. He said, "Make yourself a rule you can carry in your pocket." We tried a few. Don't lie to survive. Don't schedule grief. Don't negotiate with guilt after midnight. The one that stuck was simple. Be kind without performing kindness. It's harder than it sounds. It means you answer texts you want to ghost and you let others go unanswered when they only want your image, not your voice. We had a shoot that week. Cameras turn honesty into a sport if you let them. The stylists did their work like angels with scissors, laughing, teasing, protecting my head from my head. Someone asked if I was okay and I said, "Define okay." They smiled. Not because it was funny, but because the room understood that okay is a moving target, and today we were at least pointing in the right direction. The photographer caught me in the 5 seconds between poses when my shoulders dropped and my mouth forgot to be interesting. He showed me the shot like he was handing me proof that I still existed outside of headline. I saved it in a folder I don't share with anyone. Yoon Gi-hyung texted me, "Studio?" It wasn't a question. The room was dark on purpose. The way theaters are dark so you can believe in illusions for a while. We built a skeleton of a song around a drum that sounded like a door that has been closed too long but isn't locked. I mumbled a line into the mic that wasn't poetry and wasn't meant to be. I almost walked into a future that didn't know my name. He looped it and looked at me like he was checking if the floor could hold. "Don't overthink it," he said. "Let the clumsy truth sit in the front seat." We left the track unfinished on purpose. Some songs need to watch you live a little more before they decide what they want to be. Ho Bi-hyung threw me into a small class he was teaching for some dancers who were all knees and fire. He loves to hide medicine inside joy. We drilled something fast until my brain stopped trying to be in charge. Sweat is honest. It doesn't let you lie about effort. He shouted, "Counts." And every 8, I felt a piece of worry jump off like it was tired of holding on. After, he bumped my shoulder and said, "You look more 3-dimensional again." It's such a Hobie thing to say, art talk disguised as a joke. I wrote it down in my notes app because I'm collecting sentences that feel like lights in a hallway. Taeyoung showed me a new photo series he'd shot in a coffee shop where nobody knew what he was doing because he made the camera feel like a friend. He had these frames of strangers' hands stirring, holding, waiting, no faces. Just a story of touch. You can tell everything by the way someone holds a cup, he said. If they're bracing, if they're soft, if they're somewhere else. He didn't say it like advice for me, but I took it that way. I thought about how I had been holding my life like a cup. I was afraid to spill in front of people. I want to hold it like it's warm, not dangerous. Jimin came over again on one of those nights when the air is too still and your brain thinks stillness means danger. We played old demos and roasted our younger selves gently, because that's a sport we're good at. He watched me, watched myself, and said, "You're kinder to that kid now." I asked why he thought that was. He said, "Because you stopped asking him to carry a future he didn't choose." We didn't solve anything, and that was the victory. The win is not needing to force an answer out of a day that's only ready to give you a sentence. Word got out, as it always does, about the thing I didn't post. Rumors sprout in the spaces where truth decides to grow slowly. I can't control which seeds catch Sunday. Couple of headlines tried on outfits for me. Commitment phobic, cold-footed, chasing freedom, hiding behind art. Some of them made me laugh because they missed me by miles. Some stung because they touched a nerve I'm still naming. I didn't run from them or chase them. I fed myself. I called my parents. My mother asked what grocery store I was in because somehow she always hears the echo of the ceiling in my voice. My father asked if I was sleeping. I said better. He grunted, which in his language means, "Good, keep going." We had rehearsal as a group, the kind that makes grown men act like boys because it's easier to sweat than to talk. The room did that thing it does where it braids us together without asking permission. We ran old songs until they felt like muscle memory and then broke them to find new air. There was a moment in a bridge where I always smile because that's the script my face knows. And this time it didn't come automatically. I let the beat carry me across that blank space. When the music stopped, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt chosen. RM caught my eye like he always does when he's measuring the weather in me. He nodded once. That one nod has gotten me through entire winters. There was a call I had to make that I didn't want to make. The kind where you practice the opening line and throw it away because nothing scripted survives contact with a real person. I apologized without turning the apology into a performance. I owned my part without pretending my chest didn't have a different map taped to the inside. We didn't fix it. We honored it. Sometimes the best thing you can give someone is the truth that arrives late, but still on time for the life they deserve next. When I hung up, I cried in that plain way that isn't dramatic. It's just the body wringing out what it can't carry. I washed my face and didn't take a picture. I went for a drive with the windows down because I forgot what air felt like when it isn't curated. The city smelled like exhaust and bread and rain pretending it might come back. I parked near the river and watched the water argue with light. A couple held hands like they practiced. A guy ran by with the face of someone negotiating with his own lungs. I thought about love as an action, not a performance like running, like breathing, like showing up at a kitchen table when it would be easier to text an excuse. I want that kind. Slow, daily, uncool in the best way. Back at the apartment, I put my phone on airplane mode and wrote a letter I'm not sure I'll ever send. Not to anyone specific. To the version of me that tries to carry everyone's peace like a tray he's afraid to spill. I told him he can put the tray down. I told him the room won't fall apart if he eats first. I told him he's allowed to want more than applause. I told him he's allowed to wait. I signed it with a nickname only my family uses and folded it like it was fragile. Then I slept with the window cracked so real air could prove it still knew my name. In the morning, the group chat was chaos about nothing important, which is its magic. Someone sent a meme so dumb it felt like medicine. Someone asked who stole their hoodie 3 years ago and never returned it. Me, it's me. We decided to meet later just to be together without a plan. We ended up sprawled on the floor in a pile that would look ridiculous in a photo, but felt like a reset button in my chest. We replayed an old performance and groaned at our own faces. We planned something small and reckless, like a secret set at a tiny place where the stage is a suggestion and the speakers complain about it. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe we won't. The point was laughter, not logistics. I don't know what you expect me to say at the end of this. I'm not offering a slogan. I'm not claiming enlightenment. Today I made oatmeal and didn't burn it. Today I answered messages that mattered and let the others wait. Today I danced until my shirt stuck to my back and my head stopped sounding like traffic. Today I remembered a line from the scratch track and sang it under my breath while brushing my teeth. Today was not impressive, and it was perfect in the way survival days are. Perfect, sturdy, ordinary, full of small doors you can walk through without asking permission. If you're in a place where you can't tell whether you're calm or numb, I get it. I'm still learning the difference too. All I can say is this. When I stopped trying to choreograph my heart, it started moving like it meant it. When I stopped rehearsing the sentence that would make everyone relax, my body relax. When I admitted that I almost chose a life that would have fit photos better than it fit me, the mirror got kinder. I'm not done. I don't want to be done. I want to keep finding the part of the song that refuses to be polished out, because that's usually where the truth is hiding. Tonight, I'll probably end up in the practice room again. Lights low, floor cool, music bossy. Maybe one of the members will wander in, pretend they came for water, and stay for hours. Maybe I'll leave the door cracked and let the hallway hear me miss a note on purpose. Maybe I'll write another letter I won't send. Maybe I'll just breathe. That's enough for now. That's the whole plan. Breathe, do the next kind thing. Tell the truth even when it makes a mess. And trust that the people who love you can handle a little mess if it means they get the real you back. By the fourth morning, the shock had turned into a steady hum. The kind you stop noticing until a room goes quiet and you realize it's been there all along. I woke before the sun. Not because I'm disciplined, but because my brain still treats dawn like a checkpoint. The apartment smelled like last night's tea and laundry that forgot to finish drying. I opened a window and let the city's cold breath come in. For a full minute, I did nothing. Heroic, just stood there and let the air make choices for me. Somewhere a bus sighed. Somewhere a baker decided the exact second to stop kneading. I made oatmeal like a person who finally trusts hunger again. I took the long route to the gym, cap pulled low even though the morning didn't care who I was. The metal door creaked the same way it always does, complaining and welcoming at the same time. I wrapped my hands slow, counting under my breath until the numbers made sense again. Hitting the bag is the opposite of pretending. Every contact tells the truth about how you're standing, what you're avoiding, whether your shoulders still think they have to carry the room. The first few rounds I was too careful, like I was trying to be polite to leather. Then the rhythm found me, and the bag stopped feeling like an enemy and started feeling like a friend that refused to lie. Sweat ran down my spine in a line that felt like a sentence period. There's a kind of clarity that shows up only when your lungs start negotiating with time. It sounds like enough. On the way back, I passed a billboard from an era where my hair did more talking than my mouth. We look so certain up there, the kind of certain you only feel when the wind is behind you and you haven't learned yet that wind changes. I didn't feel sad. I felt grateful that time makes space for other versions of you to show up without asking the older ones to disappear. I took a photo for the folder I keep adding to the one that reminds me it's okay for a person to outgrow his own outline. There were messages waiting, some of them gentle, some practical, a few that wanted explanations I didn't have yet. I answered what I could without drawing maps I wasn't ready to follow. I sent a note to our staff thanking them for protecting 1,000 moving pieces while I learned how to stand up straight. The truth doesn't always pay overtime, but it still expects people to show up for their shifts. They have been showing up for years. It felt important to say it out loud, even if it was just in a text bubble that disappeared up the screen. We had choreography work later, the kind where you pull an old routine apart and pretend you're seeing it for the first time so it can breathe somewhere new. The mirrors kept doing their endless job, multiplying us into a crowd we could control. I lost myself in counts until losing myself felt like finding something. During a break, Hobi Hyung tossed a bottle that I almost dropped, because my brain was still dancing. He grinned and said nothing, which is different from staying silent. It's permission. He ran a small section again, slower than felt comfortable, so I could see how the movement actually starts, not in the feet, but in the spine when you remember to let it lead. That was the word for the day. Lead, not the room, not the narrative, just my own bones. After rehearsal, I walked to a tiny cafe that never plays our songs and never asks for photos. The kind of place that serves coffee like an apology for everything you didn't know how to say yet. The barista put a cup down with a small smile that didn't lean on recognition, and it felt like being trusted by a stranger. I pulled out a notebook because my phone has become an impatient friend. The page waited without buzzing. I wrote a list of things I didn't want to turn into performance. Sorrow, apology, gratitude, rest. I drew small boxes next to each word and didn't check any of them because checking is not the point. I wrote another line that I keep returning to. Don't confuse steady with stuck. It landed in me like a key finding the lock it was cut for. A message from Namjoon Hyung came in. A photo of a river that looked like it was thinking about being ice. Under it, just 2 words. Keep listening. He sends wisdom like that, wrapped in images, so your ego doesn't fight it. I stared at the water until it turned into a rhythm I could hum. I recorded a voice note not because the idea was brilliant, but because I'm trying to respect the moment I feel honest, however small. My voice sounded softer than I expected. Not weak, just less armored. Jin Hyung called as I was on my way out and told me he needed a hand with a thing that turned out not to be a thing. He does that when he knows I'm in my head, the emergency, that is really a rescue disguised as errands. We ended up comparing brands of mixing bowls like we were debating world history. He bought the wrong size on purpose and made a ridiculous face at the cashier to make her laugh. In the car, he talked about how some kitchen tools only work if you hold them exactly right. And suddenly we were talking about boundaries without ever saying the word. He dropped me off with leftovers I didn't deserve and a reminder that life is also about lunch. Yoongi Hyung had texted me a link labeled for later. It was just a metronome app. Nothing fancy. I opened it while sitting on the floor, back against the couch, breathing in time with the click until the room stopped inventing emergencies. He always finds these side doors into calm. I jotted down a simple melody, the kind you almost ignore because it doesn't show off. I'm learning those are the ones that stay. I sang the line from earlier about almost walking into a future that didn't know my name and layered it with 3 more that didn't rhyme because real days rarely do. The harmony found a pocket that felt like the exact place in my chest where fear used to sleep. I didn't record it properly. I left it rough around the edges on purpose. I don't want to sand the truth down so much that it forgets why it showed up. In the afternoon, a meeting at the company turned into a conversation I was ready for. When people care about you and about the work, they try to build a road that avoids potholes. I appreciate roads. I also know that sometimes you need to drive through the mess to learn your own steering. We spoke plainly. I said I didn't want to make promises that existed mostly to comfort strangers. I said the industry's idea of stability sometimes feels like a room with too much furniture. You can sit, but you can't dance. There were nods. There were notes. There was also the honest question, what do you need? And I heard myself say, time and no costume. It surprised me to hear it out loud. It sounded like a small request in a world that measures value in spectacle. They wrote it down anyway, which felt like being seen. On the way out, I ran into a group of trainees in the hallway. All nerves and brightness. Bodies that haven't learned yet what years of cameras do to your posture. They bowed too deep the way we all did, like we were apologizing for existing. I wanted to tell them useful things that don't fit on posters. Things like, protect your weird habits because they're handles for the real you. Treat sleep like a collaborator, not a reward. Learn the names of the security guards. Don't let the word image make you forget that faces are topographical maps of real lives. I just said, take care of your knees. which made them laugh and is not nothing. By evening, Taeyong pulled me into one of his quick adventures that look accidental and never are. We ended up at a tiny gallery that was basically a room with opinions, staring at photographs of doorways. Nothing dramatic, just entrances and exits captured the way a lullaby captures a mood. He likes art that refuses to explain itself. We stood too close to one frame, ignoring the sign, and the owner didn't scold us. She just watched us watch. On the walk back, we didn't say anything profound. He hummed a low line that threatened to become a song and then made it stop, like the sky when a storm changes its mind. He turned the camera on me for a second and I didn't flinch, which feels like progress. Jimin arrived at my place later with bubble tea and the kind of patience that makes time less sharp. He sprawled on the rug, head under the coffee table like a cat finding shelter. I told him I felt guilty for how relieved I was, like I had broken an unspoken rule that says good people should hurt longer. He didn't tell me I was wrong. He asked whether I was being relieved or being careless. The difference matters. I knew which one it was. Relief inhabits the body like breath returning after holding itself hostage. Carelessness is noisy. This wasn't noisy. It was quiet in a way that meant I could finally hear myself think without using a microphone. We watched a compilation of dogs failing at stairs until everything complicated inside me remembered how to unclench. My parents called around midnight, which is their way of telling me. They know the day is heavy because they are not usually midnight people. We didn't unpack events. My mother told me a story about burning rice the first week of their marriage and how they ate it anyway with too much sauce and too much laughter. My father said a single sentence about a friend he hadn't seen since youth who reminded him that forgiveness comes faster when you stop trying to narrate it. I don't always understand him in real time. Sometimes the meaning shows up the next day like a late guest who still gets a seat at the table. When we hung up, I felt the kind of okay that doesn't perform. Before sleep, I opened the letter I'd written to the version of me who carries a tray for everyone else. I added a line. You're allowed to hand the tray to someone who has two hands free. I put the letter back and didn't feel dramatic about it. I brushed my teeth without looking in the mirror because I didn't need to be observed to exist. I set the metronome again and breathed to its click. If peace has a sound, some days it's nothing more than that. A steady count, an unflashy room, a person deciding not to run. Morning came wearing a different face. The group chat had planned a surprise that wasn't really a surprise because they're bad at hiding joy. We met in a small rehearsal space with a busted speaker and a floor that had seen better shoes. No cameras, no brand agenda. We messed up on purpose to laugh at the mess. We stitched an old chorus to a new verse and let the seam show. There was a second, just one, where all of us hit a line together and the room felt like it knew our names better than we did. That feeling is why I do any of this. Not applause, not headlines. Just the moment 5 bodies, 6 hearts counting in the same quiet math make a space feel like a home no real estate could list. On the way out, one of our managers told me there would be noise later that we might have to ignore. I said, okay, without pretending it didn't matter. I'm learning that ignoring isn't denial when it's chosen. It's stewardship. You don't feed what you don't want growing. Back at home, I sat on the floor again and played the rough demo from the night before. It still held. I added a tiny guitar line, fingers clumsy, and kept the mistake that made the phrase trip. The trip felt human. The trip felt like me. I don't have a declaration to end this day with. I have dishes in the sink, a towel on the back of a chair, a metronome app still open, a text from Jin about a new recipe, a photo from Taeyong that I won't post, a voice note from Namjoon with river noise under a sentence about patience, an instrumental from Yoongi that starts like a door and ends like a room, an all-caps message from Hobie telling me to drink water, and a bubble tea receipt on the counter that makes me think of Jimin laughing with his whole face. It looks ordinary because it is. It looks small because healing usually is. If I've learned anything by this 4th morning, it's that the heart doesn't answer to headlines or calendars. It answers to contact. to feet on floors that forgive missteps, to kitchens that forgive silence, to friends who refuse to let you perform your way out of yourself, to the click of a cheap metronome that reminds you time is not the enemy, pretending is. I almost married someone I didn't love because I am good at finishing what I start. I stopped because I'm finally better at not starting what I can't finish with my whole self. That feels like the kind of progress that doesn't trend, and I'm okay with that. I don't need a trend. I need a life where the person I am in the quiet is the same person who shows up when the lights go warm. The week tilted again. Not with drama, just with the kind of small gravity shifts that make you realize your body has been bracing without asking your permission. I woke up to the smell of something I couldn't place, maybe dust warming on the heater, maybe the ghost of last night's ramen, and for a second I forgot what month it was. There's a relief in forgetting. It means your mind has started to trust that the worst is not waiting at the door every morning. I lay there and counted 10 slow breaths, the way a voice coach once taught me, and felt my ribs move like a gate that finally swings without squeaking. I texted the family chat a good morning photo of the sky, like a kid showing his parents a drawing. My mother sent a heart. My father sent a thumbs up that somehow felt older than the emoji knew how to be. The schedule said we had a fitting, a rehearsal, a meeting about a meeting, and then nothing, which is never nothing, because quiet hours attract thoughts like a porch light attracts moths. I made coffee wrong the first time and drank it anyway. The mirror didn't ask questions. It just returned what I gave it. A face that looked more like a person and less like a press release. I pulled on a hoodie that smelled like the laundry had lost the fight and headed out. At the fitting, fabric tried to do what fabric does negotiate with bone and posture. Stylists fussed with hems, and I stood there like a tree that's used to being measured. Someone asked if I wanted the jacket in a deeper tone, and I heard myself say, I want to be able to breathe, and the room laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. They adjusted the shoulders and something in me unclenched. Hobie Hyung popped in mid-whirlwind with a grin and a bag of snacks, stole a grape like a thief with great manners, and told me, posture first, story second, which is the kind of sentence that pretends to be about clothes and is actually about everything. Rehearsal was the kind that starts late because everyone arrives on time, but their hearts need a minute to catch up. The floor was glossy with old stories. We ran a set we could do asleep and then dared ourselves to be awake inside it. There's a point in a chorus where my muscle memory still tries to smile for the camera even when there isn't one. I let my mouth do nothing and trusted the rest of me to do the talking. The difference felt tiny and enormous, like choosing to walk instead of glide. Between runs, Yoon Gi-hyung played a beat from his phone, just a skeleton with a heartbeat, and I mumbled a line over it without meaning to. He raised an eyebrow that meant keep going, and I did, even though the words had holes in them. The holes were the point. On break, Namjoon Hyung handed me a page torn from a notebook. It was just a list of questions, a quiet inventory the way he likes to build them. Who are you when a room doesn't need you to save it? What do you do when no one will know you did it? What does your body say yes to before your brain writes a speech? I folded the paper and slid it into my wallet like it was a license to drive myself instead of being driven. He didn't ask if I'd answer them. He knows some questions just need to be carried until they decide to answer themselves. Jin Hyung kidnapped me after rehearsal the way only the eldest can by announcing that he'd already started cooking and I would be rude to keep the garlic waiting. His place smelled like a promise that had learned to laugh. He put me to work in the most forgiving way. Wash, slice, taste. He pretended not to notice when I zoned out staring at steam, then tapped the spoon against the pot to call me back like a mother bird calling a chick away from the edge. We ate too fast and then too slow. He told me about a neighbor's cat that thinks his welcome mat is a bed. I told him about the jacket that tried to squeeze my lungs into being polite. He said, good clothes know how to hold you without hiding you. And I wrote that down in my head under love. Later, Taeyoung insisted on a detour that became a destination. A street musician playing a trumpet like the city had confessed to him first. We stood across the road and let the horn bend the air. Tae filmed the man's hands, not his face, because that's where the courage was. He turned the camera on me for a second and I forgot to prepare, which is becoming my favorite kind of forgetting. The light's doing something honest, he said. He says things like that, and it sounds like the weather report I want my life to follow. Back home, the evening tried to turn itself into a loop. Couch, phone, scroll, repeat. I broke it by calling Jimin to ask if he wanted to do nothing together. He showed up with melancholy and bubble tea, set both on the table, and flopped onto the rug like a man auditioning for the role of a cushion. We watched an old performance where we looked sharp enough to cut ourselves, and he paused on my face mid-move. "This is beautiful," he said, "but you look like you're passing a test." He let the sentence sit there, not as an accusation, but as a door. "How do you want to look now?" he asked. I surprised myself by answering immediately, like I'm not afraid to be seen breathing. He smiled the way you do when a prayer finally says itself. The next morning was interviews. Not the hostile kind, just the ones where people wrap microphones around curiosity and hope you'll put your heart on it. The host was kind, which is sometimes harder because kindness invites you to say too much. I decided to bring only one sentence and let it be enough. I'm choosing honesty over speed. When she asked what that meant, I didn't tell a story. I didn't mention names. I said, "It means learning to live with silence that doesn't need to be filled." She nodded like she knew the shape of that room herself. We moved on. The segment ended with laughter because that's how TV tells the world it's safe out there. I left thinking about how safety is a real thing and also a mask, and how I'm trying to learn the difference by touch. There were rumors, of course. The internet is a forest that grows mushrooms overnight, some edible, some poisonous, all fast. I read enough to know the weather and then put my phone face down. I made a list of chores and did only half of them. I watered a plant I've been neglecting and told it I was sorry. Jimin would tease me for that, but the plant looked shinier, and sometimes that's the only feedback you get. In the afternoon, we had a small surprise, planned one of those low-ceiling spaces that smell like old speakers and hope. No announcement, just word of mouth and the kind of door that sticks a little so you have to enter like you mean it. We set up with our own hands because a room that size doesn't care about your resume. Soundcheck felt like a secret handshake. We ran 2 songs, and in the second one I missed a note and we all cheered because that's how you tell a room you're actually alive. People trickled in until the corners held their breath. The lights were not flattering, they were honest. We started. And the first chorus felt like it had been waiting for us to stop pretending we knew what came next. Mid-set, something happened that will sound small written down. A fan near the front, older, hair gray at the temples, face open, closed her eyes and sang a line like she'd been storing it for a year. The room softened around her voice. I forgot the camera was technically always there because phones are a second atmosphere now. I sang the next line back and we met in the air for a second. No theater, just 2 human beings making a bridge out of breath. That's the moment I file under proof. Proof that I didn't ruin anything by choosing not to lie. Proof that music knows how to hold what words drop. After we stayed too long shaking hands and saying thank you. Thank you is a small cup that never feels full enough. In the van, silence did what it does when everyone's heart has been rearranged by the same hour. Then chaos. Hobie declaring that the floor was trying to murder his knees. Tay swearing he saw a cat in the venue that understood chord changes. Jin threatening to cook for the entire audience next time. Yoongi announcing that the second verse needed a different bass, and then promptly falling asleep mid-sentence. Namjoon humming a new line into his phone with the volume on low like a secret lullaby. I watched them and thought, if love is not this pile of ridiculous, steady, ordinary devotion, then I don't know what I'm looking for. The day after the small show, the company sent a gentle email asking whether I wanted to issue any kind of statement. I stared at the blank reply box and felt my heartbeat get bossy. I typed, "Thank you for checking. Not right now." I'm learning to let the work speak. Hit send. Close the laptop like I was tucking in a child. I put on shoes and went for a walk without headphones. The city has its own playlist. Brakes squealing, chopsticks clicking against bowls from a restaurant upstairs, the tiny scream of a kettle, a motorcycle flirting with the speed limit. I let it play me. On a corner, a trainee recognized me and bowed too hard, almost dropping his tote bag. I steadied it and asked how his knees were. He blinked like I'd asked his bag's birthday. Sore, he said. Good, I said. Soreness is a love letter from your future self if you treat it right. I wish someone had told me that when my bones were new to this. He laughed and then got serious and whispered that he was afraid of making the wrong choice someday. I told him there are wrong choices that look right for years and right choices that look wrong for months, and the only compass I trust now is whether I can look at the mirror and not feel like I'm negotiating with a hostage. He nodded, like he'd pretend to understand now and actually understand later. That's how most good advice works. Back home, I opened my wallet to pay for something and the folded list from Namjoon fell out. I added one more question to it in my own handwriting. When you're finally quiet, what knocks? I waited. The answer wasn't a word. It was a feeling at the back of my throat that turned into a melody. I sang it into my phone badly because bad recordings hold a kind of bravery good ones sometimes clean away. I sent it to Yoongi with a message. Door? He sent back a single key emoji and then a piano line 30 minutes later because time is shaped differently in his world. That night, the members piled into my place without warning because apparently I own exactly the right amount of floor. Jin cooked a soup that tasted like a do-over you're allowed to keep. Hobie did that thing where he dances with only his hands and still manages to pull the whole room into time. Tay scrolled through photos we would never post and made us vote on our favorites like it mattered. Jimin found my metronome app and set it too fast on purpose until we were all clapping and failing and laughing. Namjoon sat at the edge of the couch scribbling in his notebook with the calm of a man building a lighthouse in pencil. Yoongi played the new piano line on my tinny speakers and it still sounded like a door swinging open. When they left, the apartment felt bigger and kinder, like a chest that had finally exhaled. I stood in the doorway after closing it, palms on the wood, forehead there for a second, like I was listening to the echo of footsteps going down the hall. I thought of the almost marriage like a country I visited without unpacking. I thought of the girl I almost asked to be my wife and hoped whatever road she's on now is lined with people who clap offbeat and love her for it. I thought of the version of me that believed finishing the story fast made it truer and sent him to bed with a glass of water and a thank you for trying. Before sleep, I wrote one last thing on a sticky note and chewed the end of the pen like a kid because some habits survive fame. Don't hide and find. I stuck it to the bathroom mirror where the steam will try to erase it every morning, and I will rewrite it until my hand remembers the shape of the letters without looking. I turned off the light.